Hi, everyone. Welcome and thanks for attending. I'm Scott at Chief Architect, and we're here today to talk about schedules. You may notice my occasional assistant here, Maya. She had the week off last week. She was happy about that. Also on today's webinar are a number of Chief Architect staff members here to keep an eye on me and also, most importantly, to help with your questions you may have. I'm going to go through my presentation today, probably take me about 20 minutes. During that time, you're welcome to chat your questions in. And then at the conclusion of the presentation, we'll open it up for live questions. You're going to find these controls to raise your hand and also to chat in your GoToWebinar control panel. Our session today will be recorded. We'll send a link out. And as always, when we do that, we're going to ask for feedback, and we always appreciate your information to help us improve on these. So with that, let me get ready here and switch over and we'll get started.
In this session, I will cover the basics of schedules, how to set up and customize your schedules, configure the schedules to include cross categories, create custom schedules, and save your schedules to a template. There are several types of schedules you can create using the program, and custom schedules for your specific needs you may have. Here are a few example schedules I've created to illustrate. On this landscape, you will notice I have a plant schedule in the lower right corner. On this floor plan, I've used the wall schedule to create a legend of the walls used. I've combined both the door and window schedule on this layout sheet, the cabinet schedule on this kitchen, and finally a fixture schedule for this bath. Let me begin by offering a best practice of where and how to create your schedules. In your plan file, whether you're working on a floor plan or an electrical plan, you want to keep that view nice and clean for your construction drawings. Placing a schedule directly in that plan or an elevation view may add clutter and not allow you to separate the scale used for the plan or the schedule easily. I like to place my schedules independently from the plan or elevation. I do this in a Cad Detail. The Cad Detail area of the program is a separate workspace for your details or your schedules. It allows you to separate the schedule and send it to your layout as a separate scaled view from your plan. When you create your schedules through a Cad Detail, it also allows you to easily save it as a part of your template plan so you can benefit from your schedules you create for all future plans, and I'll show you how to do that in this session. Let's begin by looking at a sample plan I've created with several existing schedules. In my project browser, you will notice a listing of all of my Cad details. This is where I've created my schedules. Regardless of where you create your schedules in a plan, elevation, or in a Cad detail, they will show up in the project browser under a category of schedules, making them easy to find and locate. I have saved all of my schedules that I used in my template plan. That way, when I begin a new project, my schedules I've created are formatted to my preference and then populate as I begin my design process. In my cabinet schedule here, you can see my formatting preferences with all of the columns, fonts, and grid lines I use. Let me show you how to create this schedule and its formatting. I'll begin by deleting this one and creating a new one. Toward the top of my project browser, I'm going to come over to the Cad Details. I'm going to right-click and say New Cad Detail. Then I'm just going to paste in the text from the cabinet schedule we had just deleted. The program then will open up a blank space that I can easily put the schedule in, and again, this is a nice space that's separate than my plan view. Underneath my Tools menu, I'm going to come up to the Schedules, and I'm going to select the Cabinet Schedule. Now when I place this schedule, you're going to notice that it has the default formatting that comes from our template plan. It's already populated with cabinets because I placed it in a plan that has several cabinets. Now the first thing I'm going to do is go through and do some of the customizations to this schedule, and this is mainly preference based on your style. Let's double click and take a look at this cabinet schedule. And what I'm going to do is just kind of walk down from the top. The title of the schedule, I'm going to call it the kitchen schedule. You can choose to display this or not. This is just the title. Then underneath the include options, if you unselect include objects from all floors, I can actually come down if you've named your rooms and be very specific about the room. You can make this floor specific. If you look at the different floors, I only have one floor, and it can be room specific. Then the categories to include, right now it's isolated to the cabinet, and you can see the different components underneath the cabinets you can select. Some of the items are actually not highlighted, such as the soffits, shelves, or partitions. Down underneath the columns category, these are the available columns you can add, and these are the current columns that are selected. To make a few changes in here, I'm going to click on the number. I'm going to come over on the 3D elevation, click Add. That will insert it directly below. I'm going to move that up to the top. As we come down, number, label, quantity, floor. This is only a single story floor. Again, it's isolated to the kitchen, so I'm going to remove that. Width, depth, height, the description, and then I'm going to go ahead and remove code and the comments through that category. Just shift select to remove those. And then a couple of new categories we've added beginning in Chief Architect X13 is the cabinet material for the interior as well as the exterior box. I'm going to go ahead and click Add for those elements. A few other options down here: display the columns, show color. Let's go up to the attributes panel. Again, a few options: line style, fill style, text style, if you want to control the font. And then your labels. This is what controls whether you see a label callout, which is currently selected. To use the callout label, you can choose what style that symbol is. If you unselect this, it will then show nomenclature. Let's go ahead and accept all of those changes to the schedule. As the schedule updates, you can control the sort order. Notice my fillers are showing up. If I want to sort those and organize them toward the bottom, I'm going to click on the row item. You'll see a little move handle here. And I'm just going to click and drag to pull those down. Let's go ahead and zoom in just a little bit and take a look at a couple of these cabinets. You'll notice that some of my wall cabinets here have a different color combination between the interior box and the exterior of the box. Again, that's something new that we've introduced in Chief Architect version X13. While you're in a schedule, if you click on a specific item, there's a few things you can do. One, you can open up this item specifically. There's an open row item object down here. You can then open up the dialog, make any changes you want into this. Be careful, because if you change the width of this cabinet, it may be adjacent to other cabinets in your design and cause a little bit of an issue. Now, one of the things that is also new in Chief Architect X13, if I click on the microwave drawer over here, there is a new edit button directly in the appliance door and drawer section. This edit button allows you to open up the appliance, or maybe it's a fixture, directly and do your editing. There's also the ability on the schedule, if you want to control how this fixture is managed, you can control the categories of which category it may show up into, or maybe it shows up in multiple categories. In addition to being able to open up the object directly, there's also an option to find this object in the plan. This is kind of in the lower edit menu towards the right hand side. When you click on the Find Object in Plan, the object will be highlighted back in your floor plan view, and you can see exactly where it's located. Sometimes a nice option when you're unsure of where the object may be. You'll notice all of the callouts are being displayed for the cabinets. And those callouts again are controlled through the schedule itself. If we went back into the schedule, double click to open it up, on the label panel. If I remove the option to use the callout for the label, then when you look at the floor plan, you are back to nomenclature. That nomenclature or callout is controlled through the label panel on the schedule. Standalone objects like hardware, millwork, cabinet doors, and other specialty items can be included in your schedules, such as this specific end panel I've added on this kitchen island. Back in the schedule, by opening it up, one of the new categories that have been included in Chief Architect X13 is the option for cabinet doors and drawers. By selecting this new category, available columns also updates that you can pick and choose from. I'm just going to accept the default, and if we go back in and let's zoom in, you can see that this door end panel was added individually and can now show up in your cabinet schedule. You can create custom schedules in the program. Let's take a look at the molding schedule that I've created for the kitchen by opening it up and taking a look at all of the moldings that are used in the kitchen. You can see that at the top I have the crown molding, light rail, edge profile, and then the shoe moldings for the bottom of the cabinets. This is a custom molding schedule that I've created, and we'll go ahead and take a look. The other thing I want to point out is the type of molding is actually also controlled inside the cabinet itself. You can take a look at these settings if we just open up one of the base cabinets here. On the moldings panel, you're going to notice that we have two moldings on here. The bottom one is our edge profile. It's listed by the type. Down here you can choose. And then the top one is the shoe molding, also called the base molding. And inside your schedule, when you're looking at it, is how this gets controlled. How do you create a custom schedule for moldings? Let's take a look. I'm going to come up to Cad Details. I'm going to come down. I'm going to say New Cad Detail. And then we're just going to call it Plan Moldings. Again, this opens up into a nice clean view. A lot of times you're going to want to change the defaults for your Cad Details. Most of the time, if I come up into my menu and we click on Edit Active View, I'll hover over that for just a second. Edit Active View, one of the things that you can do is change the selected defaults. It usually will inherit those from the view you were on. I was on the kitchen and bath view, so it uses that layer set. A lot of times for my Cad Details and schedules, I may use, and I have several on here, the all on, or you may have a detail layer set, and that's just a nice clean view that you can use to change it. You can also change some of the other settings if you're going to be dimensioning or anything else in here. Now I'm going to come up to the tools just like we did previously, down to schedules, and I'm going to choose the custom schedule option down here. Let's go ahead and place this custom schedule, double click to open it up, and the first thing I'm going to do is come down. Let's scroll down to the category of molding. This category is new in Chief Architect X13, and now I can choose which moldings that I want to include. So if you want to isolate it, I've already included the moldings for the kitchen specifically. So I'm going to just come down here and I'm going to use the door and window casings, maybe the lintels, and also the room and the window sills. This would be for the entire structure. Again, if you unselect this, you can go down and make it room specific, as I did for the cabinet schedule, also for that kitchen molding schedule. I'm just going to change the name to molding schedule, and then you can pick and choose the categories you want to add. A lot of times I like to click over here before I click add. That will control where it's going to be included. 2D symbol, which is really the profile, so I may just change that to the profile name. And then for these remaining fields, I'm just going to hold my shift key down, select the bottom, hold the control key down, select the top. I'm going to remove those elements, and then I'm going to proceed to come down and I'm going to choose the room name to add over here, the length, and then the last one I want to use is the type to add in here for the schedule. And that's a process to create a custom schedule, in this example using a molding for the majority of the house. And then you can isolate how much length, lineal feet, of the molding you need. Now, a few new things that we've done in Chief Architect X13. If you take a look at the remaining schedules that I have in this example plan, one of them is I have a roof plane schedule. If we open this up, you can see the different roof planes. This goes in, allows you to create the shape, the quantity of these roof planes that are being used, both the projected area and surface area, as well as perimeter. All of these fields you have accessible down here when you're creating these schedules. Another schedule that we've added to is the Windows schedule. Inside the Windows schedule, one of the things we've allowed for is Skylights. So at the top area up here is my skylight, and when you look inside the schedule, scroll all the way down underneath the window category. What we've done is we've added the option to include skylights in your window schedule. They could also be included in other schedule. Now, another new feature we've added for your schedules is the ability to export your schedule. When your schedule is highlighted, in the lower edit menu is a new tool beginning in Chief Architect X13 to export your schedule. This allows you to export it as text, a comma separated value, or an XML spreadsheet type file. With doing this, makes it easy if you're going to be exchanging data with another third-party application. Another way you can use your schedule is for keynotes. For the kitchen keynotes that I have for this plan, you can see that I have about 15 different notes. Let me show you how I've created these. Let's go back into the plan view, and all I'm going to do is open up one of the wall elevations that I have existing. And you're going to see a handful of these notes that I've used for my keynote schedule. To create these notes, underneath your text tool is a note option. So you can come over here, you can click to add a note into the design. And then as you add the note, I'm just going to call this pull out drawers. There's a note type. I'm going to change that from the generic NKBA to a kitchen specific note, and then accept most of the other defaults. When you do this, you'll see that it will automatically generate the next number. And what controls this is really a schedule of keynotes. Let's go back and take a look at that schedule of keynotes that I've created in here. Let's double click on this schedule in here. So the first thing is I've given a name. And as you scroll down on the categories, you can see that note is selected. And then what type of note? You just saw that in the drop down. I've selected it as a kitchen, and then the fields that are going to be included are the 2D symbol. That's the callout number over here on the left. And then the text of the note, which is to the right of that. And I chose not to show those column headings by unchecking that option. So you can use your schedules to control your keynotes, whether it's exterior, interior keynotes, manage those through this process. All of these schedules have been created inside of my plan. And one of the things that I like to do is have these ready for all future plans and save them in my template file. So once you've gone through the effort of creating them, formatting them to your preference, go ahead and save that as a template file. The way you do that, make sure you're in your plan file. Underneath of the file, come down to templates and save as template. Now, a couple of these settings in here are pretty important. One is you want to make sure that you're not going to delete the Cad details. That's where we've created all of our schedules over here on the right hand side are in Cad details. Also, make sure you uncheck the schedule itself. There's a few other options down here that you can choose to uncheck, and then set that as your default template for future plans going forward. And then when you begin the process, you will have all of those schedules that you've created available in your template plan. Well, that wraps up this session on schedules. I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.
Okay, well, let me get my screen shifted around here, and we'll take some questions. As you are wanting to ask any questions live, be sure to raise your hand. You'll find that in your GoToWebinar control panel. And also, remember to unmute your microphone as we call on you, and then take your question live. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Carrie and see if anybody out there has any questions. Carrie?
Yes, we do have several questions. We have Robin Stewart here with a question. Hi, Robin.
Hey, how are you all doing this week?
Hey, Robin.
So a couple questions with the cabinet schedules. I have two. The first one is when I am doing, because I do a lot of custom kitchens, when I modify the width of a cabinet, say it's 28.5 inches, which is common to use that 1/2 inch size, my labels automatically come up rounded up to the next one. So if I specify 28.5, it comes up as a B29. So I'm ending up going in and changing labels on everything. And I'm wondering if there is a setting in Chief Architect to get it to be what the dimension of the cabinet is, because unfortunately with remodels, I can't use 3-inch increments, and I'm sure the majority of designers don't either.
You want your nomenclature to show up on the plan view and also your schedule?
That's correct.
Okay.
With the correct dimension. Yeah.
Yeah. And then what's your second question, Robin?
My second question is if there is some way that I could automatically do an order. So for example, like a lot of cabinet manufacturers or even some cabinet companies go by wall tall base. If there's a way to sort, or if I just have to manually, because sometimes I'll go to, like if I remove a cabinet or put something in after a new schedule and I go to like renumber, then it goes all out of whack again. And I'm stuck moving everything back to like 1s, 2s, 3s, and
so you'd like to maybe lock it so it's not jumping around when you adjust your cabinets?
That's correct. Or, because, if I go into a client meeting and we make modifications and then I have to redo a schedule, even if we've already had a bid or a measurement change or something like that, a lot of times or if we're working between several plans, sometimes it's just, I'm always like moving them, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, okay. Well, two really good questions. Let's take a look at your first one with the ability to control your cabinet schedule. And let me just throw a cabinet out here and let's kind of go in here and let's make him 28.5 inches in width and see what we can do about this. So 28.5 on there, and then let's take a look at our label. And right now, clearly our label is showing up as a B29. It's rounded it. And if we came in here and specify our label, let's see, and I'm not sure because I haven't done this, but there's a macro option here. Have you tried this?
I have not, but wouldn't that be dependent on cabinets? Like, I mean, every time I put a cabinet in, I either have to specify the label or put in the macro.
You could set this up probably as your default. So in this case, what I've done here is I put a macro in here. And so you can put whatever you want in here. I noticed that I left the letter B in there. And then the macro is on the width. And there are some additional macros if you wanted to control the formatting of that. I believe we use Ruby or some of those other things. So you have a little bit more custom control if you want to go more advanced beyond this style of a view.
That's awesome. I love that. Thank you.
So that's one way you could do that. And then as far as your cabinet schedule, I should have a schedule in here for the cabinets. Let's see if we can open that up and just see what that looks like. Let me slide him over into the kitchen because I've kind of made him room specific. So I'm just going to slide it over here so I don't have to reorder that. So let's go into our cabinet schedule and see where this guy is. It's a 28. And let's see here. He's probably down towards
I think he showed up. Did he show up at like number 3? No, it's like there. I saw 28.5 right there. CO5. See, he like popped right into the middle.
Yeah. And so that, I guess, leads into your second question here. How can you lock that schedule? And maybe I'll just pause here and see if any of our staff members, Al, maybe you're aware of a good way that you use in controlling your schedule. So when you make a remove or add one, as we've just done here, if there's a way to kind of lock this in place.
The only thing I've ever done if I wanted to actually lock the schedule is to just make it into a text item and disconnect it from the other. You can always make another schedule.
Mhm.
So if you take one of the schedules, you have one hot and one that's converted to text. If you
Mhm.
do make a change, you just eliminate the one that's converted to text and make a new one from the
Mhm.
existing one.
Right.
That's the only way I've ever. It's the easiest way I've done it.
I'm,
if I have
I'm
to
trying
do
to come up with less work. less.
Yeah.
it. Sub it out.
Suck it out.
I live in
Well,
Vermont.
so that sounds like a great idea, Rob. And I think I've heard that a few times, and I'll make sure that we capture that request, being able to lock maybe the ordering of the schedule and make it a little easier so it's not doing the jumping around on you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Have a great afternoon.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Scott, we have a question from Gerald. Hi, Gerald. Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, Scott. Scott, you mentioned that you can export a schedule in XML format. How do you import it back into a new plan? Is there a menu item to do that?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
if I understand your question here, Gerald, one of the things that we've done in X13 is we've allowed you to tap on the schedule here, and then there's an export, and one of those options is XML. Currently, we don't have an import. If you have an external file, you want to import that into the program. We currently are not going from the outside in to the program right now.
Okay, thank you, Scott.
You bet. Thanks for calling in, Gerald.
Mhm.
Hey, Scott, we had several people write in and they're asking if you can demonstrate how to resize previews in the schedule.
Okay. Well, let me just open that up and I'll make sure I understand your question. So if we zoom in on this section of our cabinet schedule, one of the common things that you may run into, and probably a lot of you would ask about this with electrical, I may have seen some questions coming in, but if you click on this column and we resize this column, you're going to notice the preview gets a lot larger. And this is based on the column width. And if you resize this and we get down at some point, obviously, if we make it very small, the text is going to wrap. But that's one way you can control it. Another way you can control this icon or this symbol in here is inside of the schedule itself. There's an option. Let me pull this over so we have a little bit more real estate in here. There's an option down here towards the bottom of my dialog, and that is scale images. And when you scale this, what it's going to do is it's going to try to make, let's say, your tall cabinets versus your base cabinets. Let's go ahead and just do that. It's going to try and scale them. So again, if I zoom in a little bit, you're going to notice that my base cabinet quite a bit smaller as a scale, a ratio, than of the larger ones. And maybe if we pop over into the electrical schedule, kind of the same thing. Sometimes these symbols come in quite large. And most of the time, what I might do is make this a little bit smaller. You don't necessarily need the word symbol up there. So what I might do is just come in here, click rename, actually just delete the entire column heading because it's not as really that relevant. And then you can easily then click on this, resize it to what you think is appropriate as far as the sizing for that element.
Great, thank you so much. We have a question from Ryan Gardner. Hey, Ryan, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hey, Scott, how you doing today? Thanks. This is great things coming from X13, looks like.
Yeah, yeah.
I was wondering if you could show one more time on the molding schedule for cabinets.
Okay. Yeah.
I actually have a custom one. I have a custom note schedule that I use for it.
Okay.
Now, if I understood right, it actually picks off all the moldings that you've spec'd on the cabinets.
Right.
Correct?
Yeah.
Is it possible to break it into typical lengths? So you have
So,
total length, but let's say you want
yes.
4 sticks of 8 foot. Does it
Okay.
have that option?
let's take a look. So just so I understand your question, you want to have maybe individual lengths per cabinet or something like that?
Well, let's say you have 32 feet of crown molding like you do here, and then come in a typical 6.5 foot stick or 8 foot stick. Is there a way to show that or no?
Well, here's what I can show you in the schedule. That may be a more appropriate use case for the materials list, but let's see what we can do with the molding schedule. Let's open this guy up by double clicking on it. And if we come down into the available columns down in this area right here, there is a length option in here. Let's go ahead and add that in there. And I'll just kind of pull him up one. And I think that's it as far as length. Yeah, we already have the total. So at this point, that length really isn't going to do much in adding much more detail. In some cases, it just repeats it and gives you an idea based on the different cabinet style. In that case, I would probably, Ryan, go into the materials list and look at using the materials list, and then that may be an easier way to get your, your division if you're buying them in 8 foot or 16 foot lengths, and then you could divide that out and do it through your materials list.
Yeah, I know how to use the materials list to do that. I was hoping in the schedules there would be something. Right now, like I said, I have a custom note schedule for moldings where I have a Cad detail with all my typical moldings in a note with a custom column in there. So I just go in there and say, I need 4 of these, 3 of these, 6 of those. So it populates into a schedule.
Let me pause here just for a minute, and maybe I'll see if anybody out there is on that knows if I could add a macro in here that I could divide this by 16 or 8. I'm trying to look at this. Yeah, I'm not sure I could do that in a schedule with a macro.
Now I see one of the available columns is quantity.
Right. Let's go ahead and throw that in there.
Is there a way to throw the custom profile to have a length stipulated?
Yeah,
maybe?
I'm not sure in that case that that I'm going to be able to get an option for you that's going to divide this out, so you know exactly when you show up to the lumber or the millwork store which
it did show
number of sticks.
a quantity there, but it must be how many pieces are used.
How many units, and then that's the total length of it.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's like 13 cabinet faces that's used.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, the math doesn't really work out if you divide it by 13, because some of those cabinets are 30 inches and some of them are maybe 18.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, let's make sure, Ryan, we capture that request so that if we get the opportunity, we can put that in there. That would maybe make it more divisible or easier to figure out exactly what you need to shop for at the store.
Yeah, it's not even in beta yet, so maybe we can tweak it still. All right, well, thank you very much, Scott. I appreciate it.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Ryan.
Scott, we have Vicky here with a question. Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, Scott. I have actually 2 questions. One is on that page you're showing on your screen now. How did you do the larger illustrations of the door types, and how did you do the little 3D of the sill?
Okay, so Vicky, if I understand your first question, down here at the bottom of this image, there are some elevation views of, in this case, the doors that are being used. You want to know how did that happen?
Yes.
And then I have an illustration. This is, if I can zoom in just a little bit, it's probably pixelated.
Right. Flashing details.
You want to know about that flashing detail. So typically what I might do, and what I do is I actually carry this flashing because it doesn't really change. I carry that around with my template plan as a detail. And then for these door elements, usually what I do is I'll take an elevation view and do a CAD to view, and then I'll just isolate and kind of trim that out.
Okay.
If you want to take a look at it, if I go over here into my plan, and I'm not sure, yeah, so here's my window flashing. So if you open up my window flashing, and I stick this in a Cad Detail, which is just over here in my project browser, off into the Cad Detail section. So this is an image that I would have captured. Maybe I actually built that in Chief Architect, took a 3D view, and then saved it out as an image and reused it. A lot of window companies may have flashing details. They have pictures of them. So if you wanted to import that as a picture, that'd be also an option. And then these text elements are down here. Then all I do is send that out to the layout, figure out what the scale is for it. Does that,
Okay.
does that make
Yeah,
sense?
that makes perfect sense. Now, the other question I have, well, first of all, I want to reiterate on Robin's comment. Window schedules. If I change a window and the schedule updates, the order of all the windows gets messed up. And, you know, you try to do them so that someone looking at the house can go maybe clockwise or counterclockwise to go from 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. And then you change a window and all of a sudden it's 1, 2, 3, 17, 4, 5, 6. It messes it up. So I reiterate that feature request.
Yeah.
My other question is, I must be really dense this morning, but can you explain again the difference? You have schedules and you have CAD details of the schedules. Which category is the one that you set up as kind of a default to work with, and which is the one that's specific to that plan that you're going to send a layout?
Yeah, let me just bring up a graphic if I have that handy here. So if I understand your question, we have schedules and we have CAD details, and they show up in the project browser as two separate things.
Yes.
Well, you can put your schedules in a plan view. You can put your schedules in an elevation view. You can put them in a CAD detail. And so some people, maybe me, get confused about where these things are. So it could be that you have a schedule and you just don't know where it is. And in the project browser, this is a collection of all of your schedules, regardless of where you put it.
Okay.
And in my best practice recommendation, I always suggest a good place to put your schedule is actually in a CAD detail, because then you can isolate it, you can put it on your plan, you can define whatever scale it is. It doesn't muck up an elevation view, it doesn't muck up a floor plan view, plus sometimes those scales can be different. And so it's a little bit duplicated in my work environment just because of the way schedules are, but I usually always put my schedules in a CAD detail, and then, as you noticed a little bit earlier, I save these out in my template plan. So then when I begin the process, they're already set up, and when I start building a kitchen, it already has the doors, windows, and cabinets populated and formatted for the look that I typically like to use in here.
Okay. Right.
So I don't know if that helps, but that's kind of the method for that. And then I would just maybe comment on this request for the window schedule maybe moving around on you when you insert a new cabinet. One of the things you could do is in this column that I have here, CO1, CO2, CO3, and then I think it was Robin asked me to build a 28.5-inch cabinet, which is now at the top. And if I delete that, who knows exactly what's going to happen. One of the things that I sometimes will do is I just will completely omit this column altogether, CO1, CO2, and I'll just use a call out myself and control it myself so that I'm not playing that game of jumping around. So just place a call out text, or you could even put it in the label, the cabinet label itself, and then you have exact control over what that number of the cabinet is.
Okay. Okay. That's a little extra work, but you know.
It is, but then, I mean, if you care about the ordering of your schedule and you're already moving it around, you have then precise control over exactly what those numbers are.
Yeah. It depends on what takes more time, doing it with
exactly.
a call out or
Exactly.
moving lines in your schedule. It seems
Yeah.
like moving lines in your schedule might be simpler.
Yeah, sure. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
That was it. Can't wait for 13.
Yeah, that makes two of us.
Scott, we have Joseph here with a question. Go ahead and ask your question, Joseph.
Hi, Scott.
Hey, Joseph.
Something I've asked for several years is subheadings on the top of the schedule. For example, for width, height, and length, I might want a master heading that says size, and then have those 3 things within that column. In other words, 3 columns combined into a 1 heading. And the other thing is having some control of the vertical margins on columns that is a little more than the text size. Any possibility of getting those things?
Well, I think our developer may be on the call today. And, you know, one of the things we're doing is making notes about it. I'm not sure that those couple of requests that you would like more font control or more control over what those headings look like beyond them just kind of switching over here into the schedule itself. Because right now, for these column headings, typically you either can display it or not display it, and you don't control the font for my main title versus the column headings. Again, that's something you could turn on and turn off down here. I get a one font fits all for that situation. Sounds like maybe you want control over the font in that case to maybe be a little bit different for those things. Is that right?
I'm not too concerned about the font being different, but I would like a little extra space above and below the font.
Okay.
Within
so, vertical separation.
Yeah, vertical margin. And then the other thing is having, instead of having just a title and column headings, of having a secondary column heading where you could combine. So say I would have the title on the top, and then on the second row, there would be a 3-wide heading for size.
Right.
And then with below that would be regular heading sizes. So you'd have the width, depth, and height in that third row.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I can tell you that's not something we currently have scheduled for X13, but I'll try and make, we'll get our staff here to make a note that request. As you kind of look at my schedule here, you see how I have the word door schedule and it's at a bigger font and there's more separation in here?
Right.
So typically when I want more control over that, I may even omit the title in the schedule itself. So back in the schedule, what I'll do is I'll turn the title off so it's not being displayed up here in the upper right hand corner. So I'll turn off the display of that. And then when I am putting it on my layout sheet, then I can go in and just put that, you know, that bigger font above it. And, you know, the way that I might do that, if I turn that off, you can do it right here, which is just the way that, you know, another way, it's maybe not exactly what you're wanting, but at this point you can control if that needs to be a much bigger font, and then we just call it, you know, the cabinet schedule. And then you can control the font and the separation however you want that in here and position it wherever you want, independent of that schedule, and a little bit more flexibility. And then if you like that, you could always save that in your template plan and then have your schedule right below it. So that may be a way you could do it today.
Okay, I guess the other thing I could do is just have a standard text box with the borders and grids, and put that above the schedule.
Yep. And then if you save it in your template plan, you kind of only build it once.
Right.
Yeah. Sounds like you may have solved that yourself better than I did.
I've done that in the past, but I have somewhat of a problem because sometimes the column widths on schedules get bigger than they don't always stay put.
Yeah, they'll sometimes be dynamic. They'll grow if we have a long description. Most of my descriptions here are pretty short, but in my cabinet materials, you see they get pretty long, and that will be a dynamic thing that if you have a long paint name or a long descriptor name, then those boxes, those columns will be dynamically sized, and then, you know, you may need to click on them and, you know, kind of position them into a right size.
Would there be a way to program it so that the columns would be able to be locked in size and just have the text automatically then wrap?
You know, one of the things that I do is, Joseph, is I save my schedule all pre-formatted in my template plan. So most of the time it seems to work fine with my case because I've already modified it and kind of locked it in. As far as locking it in when I put a new schedule, I think that the default is to, you know, you don't have control initially when you place that cabinet schedule or whatever schedule it is to have a fixed column width, because each one of these, there is no column width to define down here in the available columns.
Okay, so if you save the schedule in the column, or I mean in the CAD detail, then and modify the widths, then they will stay locked?
They should stay better locked. I'm not going to commit that they're going to stay locked 100% of the time, because you may end up, you know, changing it around and positioning it, but I think you're going to have better luck with it that way. And do you carry your schedules around with your template plan?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. We'll give that a try and see if that works for you.
Okay, will do.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, yeah, thanks a lot.
Scott, let's check in with Nikki. Go ahead and ask your question, Nikki.
Hi, Scott. My question is about the labels displayed by the schedule. Generally, with our cabinets on our plans, we like to show the nomenclature of the cabinet on the plan view, but then we like to have the call out labels on the elevations. And I was wondering if there is going to be any sort of update in X13 to allow us to kind of manage those based in the view that we're looking at on the layout, as opposed to kind of only one option through the schedule. Currently what I'm doing is I'm printing my, or plotting my, you know, first half of pages with the nomenclature showing, and then printing the second half with my elevations with the call out labels, and then I stitch those PDFs together after the fact.
Sounds like you're very innovative. Yeah, so that, I think I saw that question come in. So if I understand your request accurately, in your floor plan view, if we pop back over there, what you'd like to do is see nomenclature showing up in here, right?
Yeah, just like that.
Yeah, and then when you take your elevation view, as we open up one of these cameras, you want it to show up as a call out label.
Correct.
And not nomenclature.
Correct.
So currently I can't do that automatically. And what I typically do when that's a need is I will leave the nomenclature on in the plan view, and then in this view I'll just use the text call out here. Do that as a call out, and then if we called it, you know, C1, figure out what your symbol is, and then you can set it up and do a multiple copy across there. And some of, if you missed it earlier, some of the people also wanted the cabinet schedule to not change if they deleted a cabinet or added a cabinet. And this is an approach that could also be used to not have those cabinets move around on you in a schedule as well.
Okay, is there, with those call outs, is there an option with a macros to, that way you're not having to manage those specifically yourself, to just call that call out label from the schedule at all?
You know, there is a macro that you can control the numbering. You just have to be a little bit careful, because then you get back into the same issue we were talking about earlier with the schedule. The numbers start to jump around on you and you don't have as much control. So there is a macro you can put behind them, but be careful, because that may cause some more work because the number isn't exactly what you wanted it to be.
Right. Okay. Yeah. No, I've been sticking with the numbering from the schedule. I haven't had an issue with that. And I usually just reorganize those if I do delete a few and it has missing numbers. I just hit the renumber. So that's been fine, and that would be a pain in the butt to go back in and renumber all those cabinets individually. So this could be an option. That way I don't have to split up my printing batches.
Right. I just usually use the sticky copy and then kind of position them.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll just go in and modify the label on each one of those real quickly. And then
Okay.
I know exactly what I have.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Nikki.
Hey, Scott, we have a question from Larry Singleton. By the way, he's one of our finalists in the Residential Design of the Year contest, so go vote for him.
Woohoo. Hey, Larry.
Good afternoon, Scott. When I finish the current model I'm working on and I have tweaked the schedules and get them just like I like them, how do I save those changes to the blank template form that I started with without saving all the elements of the model itself?
Sure. Okay, well, let's make sure I understand what you're talking about here, Larry. Did you see in the presentation earlier when I saved that into the template plan by chance?
No, I think I missed that.
Okay, so I've got a pretty simplistic kitchen plan open here, and you know, there's a handful of cabinets in here. I've got a door window schedule, maybe a few other schedules that you see off to the right hand side of my screen. So it looks like I have an appliance schedule all the way down through a window schedule. And usually what I do, Larry, is I will save these as part of my template plan because they're already formatted to have the right look and feel, font, color, all those kinds of things. In my template plan, then when I start a new plan, they're already available in there. And the way you do that is underneath your file menu, come down to templates and save as template. You see that in my menu? I'll pause there for a second.
So that will actually just save the template. And I've been assuming that it would save everything in that model as the template, all my walls.
Yes. Yeah, so when you click this save as template, here's what you want to do. First of all, you're absolutely correct. You want to delete the walls and windows and cabinets and all those things because you want a blank shell of a plan. But you want to leverage any of the things that help you in producing your drawings. Defaults such as dimension defaults or whatever. And when you bring up this save as template, if you uncheck Cad Details, that's where I happen to put all of my schedules. And then over here on the right hand side, then I also uncheck the schedules. Everything else is deleted. So the client info, the extra floors, materials list, all of the objects, and then the cameras. That's what clears out this plan and leaves no architectural elements left or any client information left.
Okay.
And then if you check this bottom button down here, set it as your default for your templates, then this is going to go through and basically create a template. I'll just click OK, and then we'll give it a name here.
So it's creating a whole new template.
Yeah, it's going to create a new template. And then if I just give it a, I'll just put it in my templates folder. Let's just call it the webinar template. Okay. And so this is going to be stored in my templates file, usually in your current version. And once we do that, what's going to happen is it's going to save it. Then it's going to open it up as a brand new plan that is, for the most part, completely devoid of information in here. And on that new plan, if we go over into our project browser for this, let's kind of shrink this up, get this new plan. It's unsaved at this point, but you'll see here are all the schedules available.
Yeah.
Right.
As I've modified them. Okay.
Yeah, and so it has all of that work. If you are picky about the way your schedules look, then this is a great way, because then if you throw in, you know, a door and a window and a cabinet, then when you open up these schedules, if we just kind of pick on our window schedule, here it is. It's already formatted the way that I like it.
Cool.
So the work, the heavy lifting's done after you create that initial schedule, but save it in your template plan so you can benefit from that.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right, Larry. Thanks a lot for calling in.
Scott, we have a question from Charles. Hey, Charles, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hey, hi there, Scott. Quick question for you. For example, on your door schedule, I get a lot of schedules that are really long. And when I throw them in my layout, I have to kind of throw two versions of it, and I have to crop it down. And then if I add another door window, it expands the schedule. Basically what I'm asking, is there a way or a function that we can just get that schedule to wrap or cut off at a certain length? For example, like your text is really small in that door schedule. I imagine if you expanded it, it would get pretty long.
Yeah, and so here's a bigger plan that I just opened up, and there's a lot of windows in here and a lot of doors in here. And so if I understand your question right, you'd like to have an automatic return, so once it hits a margin that it would automatically wrap and maybe start a new area. Is that fair to say?
Right, so it's not just one long schedule. You can have multiple columns, for lack of a better term,
Sure.
multiple schedule. Yeah, you know what I'm talking.
Would this approach that I've done here, where I've done the window schedule by floor, in this case I have, you know, floor 1, floor 2, floor 3. I believe this is a 3-story or a basement design, and I just broke the window and door schedules out by floor.
That could work. Basically, what I really run into problems with are my electrical symbols. I'll have a ton of different different electrical objects in there, and it's hard for the electrician. You know, he wants to know how many for the whole house of these outlets to order, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. With respect to electrical, you know, those can be long lists because you've got a lot of plugs or you got a lot of recessed lights, right? And if we open up my schedule over here, let me bring that back open for the electrical schedule. So with this electrical schedule, this is a pretty small plan actually that I have open, but you can see that, you know, and you get a bigger house, you know, this goes on and on and on. One of the things you can do is you can gang these up so that they're, notice that I have 18 single pole switches in here. And so you can gang these up so they repeat, but the more electrical items you have in here, if you have a bunch of specialty GFCI switches or other things, then this can get a little bit unruly. So one of the things that you could do is, you know, you could figure out what your total is in here. So you need 48 4-inch recessed cans. You could also do an electrical legend. Do you ever use those?
Well, I don't know how to automatically generate it. In the old school days, you'd have to put all the individual fixtures like against the wall, and it would, like you said with that, oh, there you go. Okay.
So this is usually what I do in this case, Charles.
Was that automatically generated, or you just took it in?
This is not automatically generated, but this is something that I carry around in my template plan. And then, you know, as time moves on and they invent new things, like they have these fancy new GFCI pop-up outlets that come out of your countertops nowadays. And then there's USB outlets and LED outlets, and probably by the virtual kitchen and bath show, there'll be 3 more of those things. So what I do typically is I will just add on to this. And if you kind of zoom in and let's just pick on outlets in here, I have an LED outlet, a USB outlet, and I just go in and pull those symbols in and add them into this, and we'll update it separately and then just carry it around with a plan. This doesn't give me a count, but it consolidates the view, and it's more of a legend than a schedule. The way this gets populated, one of the ways, there's a few ways you can do it, but one of the easiest ways is you can go into your electrical in here. And if I want to add one of these items into that legend, if it's something new, what I might do is come over into the legend, and those are all CAD symbols that are embedded each time you place one in your plan. They're embedded in your plan. So underneath your CAD tools, we can come down to the Cad Block Management. I'll just pause there, make sure you can see my screen. There's sometimes a lag. Cad Block Management. And at this point, these are all of the CAD objects that are currently being used in your plan. So we'll just kind of make it easy here. Here's a 220 volt symbol. If you scroll down, there's a bunch of symbols in here. So I can just grab this and insert it into my design. Let's just slide over here and place it. And now I've got that added into my legend. I periodically will just update this if I've used a new type of symbol that I haven't used previously. Then I'll just update this, and then again, I have it going forward to my next plan because they'll probably invent a new switch that I want to use.
Okay, so you just have to keep track of what's in your legend versus what's in your plan and update it accordingly, or delete it.
And it could be that, let's say, if you come back up here, I've kind of gone to using the LED strip lights underneath my cabinets. I still have the old puck light in here. Maybe I use it, maybe I don't, but if you see that as a symbol, you could ignore it. If you're super picky and don't want to see it, you just click on it and delete it. If you don't like it, just hit delete, and then you could update the text accordingly.
Okay, gotcha. Well, that's a good workaround. At least you can get more items in your schedule that way without having the graphic there in that left-hand side.
Yeah, go ahead, Al.
If you want to try something else, maybe you can take your schedule, send it to the layout twice, and use the layout to crop off whatever section you don't want, and you can create your columns that way.
Yep, Al, that's what I'm currently doing. But the problem is when I crop the schedule and I throw like another item in there, it truncates down. Right. And it's below that crop, so I got to be real careful that I didn't crop the.
Gotcha.
I've got to recrop it.
I'm with you.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay. Thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate your help and love the demo.
Thanks, Charles.
Scott, we have Stefan here with a question. Hey, Stefan, go ahead and ask your question.
Hey, Scott. That's actually Steven, but that's fine.
We'll call you Steven.
Sorry.
A number of our plans have different color cabinets that require two different schedules for when we send them into order. And I'm wondering if there's any way to do that without getting the duplicate numbers.
Okay. So there are two different colors of cabinets?
Yeah, say you have white perimeter and blue island or whatever.
Right. Yeah. And so you want to isolate those in two different schedules?
Correct.
Okay. Let's take a look. Let's close a bunch of this stuff we have going on over here. Where are you calling from today?
I'm in New Hampshire.
All right. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
So let's just throw in a couple of cabinets over here. And could be that you've got a cabinet on the perimeter and you got a cabinet out here for your island, right? And I want to put these on two separate schedules. So perimeter cabinets, or well, maybe I'll call it grouping 1 or grouping 2, whatever you want to do. Have you used custom categories for your schedules at all?
Yes, I've actually been doing it with a note schedule and just assigning different like cabinet 1 and cabinet 2 to them and kind of separating it that way. I didn't know if there was an easier way to do that with the cabinet schedule.
So here's what we can do. Let's go underneath our schedules area and let's look at our custom schedules. So what I've done, let's actually go into the setup first. Manage custom schedules. So I saw your question come in. And what I did is I created two new categories, grouping 1 and grouping 2. All you need to do in here is, come in here, and if you wanted to add a new grouping, and we call it island, that's all I'm doing to add a grouping in here. So these are just categories.
Sure.
Okay, so now that these are built, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, let's rename this one, and we'll just call it perimeter. So I have the cabinet perimeter and I have the island. And what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to take the perimeter cabinet, open it up, and underneath of the schedule information down here at the very bottom,
Mhm.
and imagine you have a bunch of cabinets around your perimeter. You group select these, so it's not, you have to click on every one of them. And
Sure.
I'm going to just go up to the schedule, and I'm going to override what the automatic behavior is. And I'm going to turn it off of the default base cabinets that it comes in. I'm going to come down to the custom, and I'm going to put on that perimeter cabinet area. Then I'm going to do the exact same thing for the island one. Again, you can group select those, and we'll turn it off for the basic one, come down to the custom, throw that on the island schedule, okay?
Mhm.
And then as you come over here and we place a custom schedule, so let's just use our custom schedule. And then in this custom schedule, all I need to do is come down into that area, mark that we want to use the cabinets from the island, and I'm not going to worry about formatting that, but
Mhm.
there is the cabinet number G01 for that schedule for the island cabinets. Does that help?
Yeah, but you're basically creating 2 new cabinet schedules,
Right.
and then
You could
follow that
also
through
leave
on
all
your.
of your perimeter cabinets just on the regular cabinet schedule, so you don't have to
Yeah.
put 2, and then take your island cabinets and put them into that custom area. That way you could isolate it.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. That's good stuff.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Thanks for calling in, Stephen.
You bet.
Scott, we have George here with a question. Hey, George, go ahead and ask your question.
Oh, hi there, Scott.
Hi, George.
Very pleased to see the skylights appearing in the schedule.
Yes.
Long overdue, I would say.
Yeah.
I think just about 60 or 70% of the projects I do involve skylights of some sort or other. And am I to assume that as far as defining or entering the skylight in the plan, there is a better, more practical way of entering the dimensions of the skylight?
Okay. So if I understand your question, when you put a skylight in
On a roof.
in a plan, you want to be able to specify exactly what the dimensions are?
That's right, because in the schedule, it does show the true dimensions and the projected dimensions, if I'm right.
Okay, so I have a couple of skylights here. I just switched over to a roof plan view. And if I open up, I believe I put that on my window schedule in here. Let's open up that window schedule. And I've got 4 skylights that are 22 by 72 inches, right?
Right.
And so if we go back over into the roof plan, typically, if you open this up and you have your temporary dimensions on, I use my temporary dimensions oftentimes to, help in resizing this.
But are you resizing the projected dimension or the true dimension?
Yeah, that one of the things that we've done here, let's go back into that window schedule. We've added the ability so that you can actually put that information in here, I believe. Let's come down to our skylights. Let's maybe isolate that so we can make it a little bit less. All right, so let's see if we come down. I think we added that as a separate column. Yeah, all I have is the actual size and the, that should be at the top. Actual and standard areas, what I have for those skylights. And so your question is am I editing the projected or am I editing the actual size of it?
That's it. I think maybe this is for a future development, is to, when you're placing a skylight, is to have the same level of functionality in defining the size and possibly other parameters as ordinary windows.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is a window after all, it just happens to be on the roof.
Right. So what you'd like to see in that case, if we just opened up one of these skylights, is you'd like to be able to see, because right now all I'm giving you is the frame information. And you'd
That's
like
right.
to see the same type of information available in our window that has the X and Y coordinates of that window.
That's right.
Okay, we'll make sure we get that captured.
Okay.
Okay, where are you calling from today?
UK, small town west of London.
All right, well, welcome.
Scott, we have a question from Eric. Hey, Eric, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, just quickly, does the schedules always have to be vertical or could they be horizontal as well?
I can't do that automatically. Obviously, if you converted it into a text object, then you can format it, but automatically, I don't have that control to do that.
Okay.
Scott, Robin has another question. Hey, Robin, go ahead and ask your question.
I'm sorry, I think I figured it out for the most part, but what had happened when I tried to set the default settings to the width macro, it was random for every single cabinet. So I ended up having, like, I couldn't do it in my default settings. I had to go do it in each individual cabinet. Does that make sense? Like, it would show up different on every cabinet, like the width and the height still like is a little sketchy. It's showing 35 inches instead of 34.5, but I can get over that. So it's not a big deal. I think I found the workaround, but I'm not exactly sure why in my default settings it wasn't showing in the plan view. That's all.
Okay, so Robin, let's see. I've got a couple cabinets here, and let's make them slightly different sizes here so we know that they're slightly messed up. And let's just pull that out.
And go to default settings instead of inside the cabinet. I want to be able to set it up so that way I don't have to go to each individual cabinet to make sure that width shows correctly. Just exactly what you showed me last time.
Okay, so let's just peek and see if this is a setting inside both these cabinets. You want to set it as a default, and
correct,
we go
yes.
into the label.
Under like but I would set it up as a template, so it would be under the, I would be doing it under the wrench. And so that's what I tried to do, is I tried to do it under the wrench and it got a little pissy with me.
Yeah, I may not be able to do that. So if we put in the width in here, let's go ahead and put that macro back in. Width, there we go. Let's call it BA. Okay, so then if I set that as my default cabinet, I may not have that control. Let me just set that as a default. Let's place a new cabinet. So you see how it followed the label with me?
Yep.
So what I did, instead of going into the default settings underneath cabinet, right? And
Which
your
is what
general cabinet.
I went
right?
under base cabinet. I actually went under like base. Yes, I went under base. Yep. And then went under the label. Yeah, and I put it in there, and I put a B in there.
Yeah. That's basically what I did. I just like to modify the cabinet and then set it as the default. But anything you type in here, let's call it B1, and then the width, just to kind of make it up. And now that that's my default, when I place a new cabinet, it'll have that label in there.
Yeah.
Is that what you're after?
Well, the measurement wasn't, that was fine and that was perfect, but the measurements weren't corresponding. So when I was making it like 28.5 inches, it was showing all random measurements. So I had to go into each cabinet individually.
Mine works.
Well, gosh, I guess I'm doing something wrong.
I'd have to take a look at it.
I didn't do it from inside the base cabinet and then set as a default. I went right into default settings. Yeah, I did it right there.
Yeah, both ways should work the same way. So underneath your cabinets, underneath your base cabinets. And the reason that mine's working on the label, make sure you're putting in this macro called width.
Yep, that's exactly what I did. That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if it's not working for you, send us your plan and we'll take a look at it and see why it may not be working.
Cool beans. Yeah, because all of it was like such random dimensions. It was like a B24 was coming up as a B20. and B18 was coming up as a B16, and it was just like such random. And then when I went into each cabinet individually and did it, it was fine.
So what's going to happen here is they will look somewhat random. So here's a B36, right? And if I make this cabinet, let's go ahead and change him to be width of 33.5 and then a height of 34.2. This is going to be, you know, some crazy number because we've used
like the crazy numbers.
So we've used a macro there, and it's taking the height and the width. So if you change any of those variables, there's also depth, which would add to that macro and put more detail.
It does, but oftentimes, like for example, like oven cabinets or tall cabinets, they're going to be 25.5 inches deep versus 24.5 inches. So countertops can dive into the side of them.
Yeah.
So having those, where we need 25.5 inches for refrigerator units, sometimes for oven units, because of the depths of ovens and microwaves sometimes seem to exceed the 24-inch cabinet threshold. And I just wanted to have a way that my dimensions that I enter on the floor plan can get transferred to the schedule.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Well, just double check underneath your defaults or right in the cabinet that you've set it up that your label is using those macro percentages, and those are accessible down underneath in this case for the object specific for width or height or depth.
Robin, that you might check in your dialog box there, Scott, there is a use default formatting. If there's a check there, that may be throwing things off.
Yeah, and a lot of times what that does, if we check it, uncheck it, you see how it adds the inches?
Yeah.
If you uncheck it, it will remove the inches.
Got it.
But that, as Derek says, maybe that's changed your formatting slightly.
Good enough. Thank you for my high maintenance questions today.
Yeah, we'll see you next week.
Scott, we have another question from Gerald, and that's our last question. Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask Gerald.
Yes, Scott, about an hour ago, someone asked the question of how to modify an attribute for a cabinet and have it appear in a schedule.
Right.
And I just want to point out that you can use a custom field in the object information dialog in order to accomplish that.
Yeah, that's a good point. So I think what we're pointing out is down here, there are fields that you can add down here. This is what you're talking about, Gerald?
Right.
Yeah, you can add special fields down here.
And the special field that you add can use a macro. You see there's a little macro tab off to the right there.
Right.
And you can use that macro to modify any of the attributes of that cabinet and get what you want. And that'll show up in your schedule as another column.
Yeah. Thanks for adding that. That's a good point. Kind of a little bit of a hidden but powerful feature. Remember, any of those things, if you hit the help button down here, it's always a sign of weakness to do that, but we do a pretty good job, I think, of explaining what and how these fields work and how you can use them to your advantage.
That was our last question. Were there any announcements you wanted to make?
Yeah, I wanted to thank everybody for attending today. And again, we're going to be sending an email out with a link to the recording as well as a request for survey. If you get a chance, please take a moment. We appreciate the feedback. And then just to kind of talk about our schedule going forward and what some of our training options are. I always like to point this out. We've been doing these free webinars. They're on Thursdays. I'll show you what we're doing next week with some fun cabinet things. We're doing virtual training seminars. These are full day classes, and they're typically 2-day classes. We've consolidated that, changed it for the virtual world. They're 4 hours over the course of 4 days, and our schedule is coming up in January and February for that. Well, again, I'll show you that as we go to the website. We do on-demand classes. These are classes you can attend in the convenience of your own home at your own time, whenever you want to watch them. And then one-on-one training is a great way to take your project, learn more about how the program is working. We do screen sharing, and it's a great way to do that. If you're interested in that, just give us a shout out here, give us a call. We can hook you up with that. It's a really great service. It's all about you. Then of course we have our video playlist with different videos and how-to articles. And then Chief Talk, which is a community of customers and users like you solving problems for one another. Great resource. And as we kind of talk about specifically what we have coming up, I'm just going to scroll down to the training information, sign up. And here's the virtual training that I mentioned. It's coming up in January. We've got an intro class, an intermediate class, and the kitchen and bath class, which will start the first week in February. The on-demand training that I'd mentioned is going to be at your convenience. We have the introductory, intermediate, and kitchen and bath. And then we do have a boot camp, one starting Friday. If you're new or feel like you're new or feel like you want a refresher, this is a great way to maybe hit the ground running. Some of you may be brand new to the program. This boot camp is a great way to do that. It's free. It's this Friday. It's at 10 a.m. There's a sign up button. Take advantage of that. Next week, same place, same time, we're going to be talking about customizing cabinets. We have some new features that we've introduced. We'll be talking about those coming up with X13. And again, if you click the sign up button down here, then we'll see you back here, same place, same time. Following week, we're going to be doing space planning, a couple of tips that are used in space planning. And then we'll have our January schedule coming up here pretty soon. So thanks everybody, and hopefully we will see you again soon, and have a great day.